The deafening roar of the grizzly bear shattered the peaceful mountain silence as Jack Zimmerman threw himself between the massive predator and the fallen hiker. With nothing but a hiking stick and raw instinct, he had only seconds to make a decision that would forever change his life and the life of the terrified woman behind him. "Stay down," Jack shouted, his heart hammering against his ribs as he positioned himself as a human shield. The bear, standing nearly 8 feet tall on its hind legs, hesitated just long enough for Jack to make his move. At 32, Jack wasn't particularly remarkable, just a dedicated single father who worked as a forest ranger in the Grand Teton National Park, struggling to make ends meet and raise his 8-year-old daughter Emma on a modest government salary. But in this moment, facing down 600 pounds of agitated grizzly, he channeled something primal and fearless. The woman behind him was clutching her bleeding leg, her expensive hiking gear splattered with mud and blood. Later, Jack would learn her name was Zoe Zimmer, a 30-year-old tech company CEO worth millions who had come to the wilderness seeking solitude after a corporate merger. But right now, she was just another hiker who needed his help. "Make yourself big." Jack called to Zoe without taking his eyes off the bear. He raised his arms, made himself as large as possible, and began shouting at the animal while slowly backing toward the injured woman. The bear huffed, swaying its massive head from side to side, torn between aggression and retreat. Jack's training kicked in. He reached for the bear spray on his belt, removing the safety with practiced ease. When the grizzly took one threatening step forward, he unleashed a cloud of capsaicin spray that caught the wind perfectly, enveloping the bear's sensitive nose and eyes. The animal roared in distress, pawing at its face before dropping to all fours and retreating into the dense forest. Jack didn't relax until the crashing sounds of the bear's escape faded into the distance. "Can you move?" he asked, kneeling beside Zoe. Her dark hair had come loose from its practical ponytail, and despite her pale complexion from shock and pain, he couldn't help noticing how striking she was. "I think it's just a flesh wound," she gasped, attempting to sound braver than she felt. "But I can't put weight on it." Jack quickly assessed the injury. The bear's claws had torn through her hiking pants and left 3 parallel gashes on her calf. Nothing life-threatening if properly treated, but they were 5 miles from the nearest access road. "I'm going to have to carry you," he said, already removing his first aid kit and quickly disinfecting and bandaging the wound to stabilize it. "I'm Jack, by the way. Jack Zimmerman. I'm a ranger here." "Zoe Zimmer," she replied, wincing as he tightened the bandage. "And yes, I realize we have practically the same last name. Must be fate." She attempted a smile through her pain. "Good to meet you, Zoe, though I wish it were under better circumstances." Jack turned and offered his back. "Climb on, it's going to be a long hike back." As he began carrying her through the forest, neither of them could have predicted that this moment, this chance encounter between a struggling single father and a wealthy tech executive, would be the beginning of a love story that would transform both their lives completely. The journey back to the ranger station was grueling. Jack carried Zoe on his back for nearly 2 hours, stopping only when absolutely necessary. Despite her protests that she could try walking, he insisted on carrying her. The last thing they needed was for her wound to reopen or become more contaminated. "You know," Zoe said during one of their brief rests, "most men I meet are trying to impress me with their net worth or their connections. You just saved me from a bear and are carrying me 5 miles without complaining once." Jack took a drink from his water bottle before passing it to her. "I'm just doing my job. Risking your life for a stranger is in your job description," Zoe asked, eyebrow raised. "Keeping people safe in the park is," he replied simply. "I've got a daughter who needs me to come home every night so I don't take unnecessary risks, but I couldn't just watch someone get mauled by a bear." "You have a daughter?" Zoe asked, genuine interest warming her voice. Jack's face softened. Emma, she's 8 going on 30, smart as a whip and twice as sharp. She's staying with my neighbor while I'm on this 3-day patrol. Her mother, Zoe ventured carefully, left when Emma was 3, decided parenthood in Wyoming weren't for her. Last I heard, she was in Seattle. Jack adjusted Zoe on his back and continued walking, his tone making it clear the subject wasn't up for further discussion. By the time they reached the ranger station, Jack's muscles were burning with fatigue. The on-duty medic examined Zoe's wounds and determined she needed proper medical attention at the hospital in Jackson. "I'll drive you," Jack offered, already grabbing his keys. "You've done more than enough," Zoe protested. "I can call for a car service." Jack shook his head. "Cell service is spotty at best, and it'll take forever for someone to get here from town. Besides, I need to file an incident report about the bear encounter. I can do that at the hospital while they're patching you up." On the 40-minute drive to Jackson, they fell into surprisingly easy conversation. Jack learned that Zoe had built her tech company from scratch, developing a revolutionary security software that had recently been acquired by a larger firm for a sum that made his annual salary look like pocket change. She learned that he had been a ranger for nearly a decade, that he lived in a small cabin on the edge of the park, and that his daughter was the center of his universe. "I come out here a few times a year," Zoe admitted as they approached the outskirts of Jackson. "It's the only place I can truly disconnect from the demands of my company. No one calling for decisions, no board members to appease, just me and the mountains. And the occasional grizzly," Jack added with a smile. Zoe laughed, then winced as the movement jarred her injured leg. "Yes, well, that wasn't part of my wellness retreat plan." At the hospital, Jack waited while doctors cleaned and properly stitched Zoe's wound. He filed his report and was preparing to leave when Zoe emerged on crutches, her leg bandaged and a prescription bag in hand. "The doctor says I need to stay off this leg for at least a week," she said. "I was supposed to check out of my rental tomorrow." Jack hesitated, torn between his responsibilities and his growing concern for this woman. "Do you have someone you can call? Family or friends who could come help?" Zoe looked away, and for the first time, Jack saw vulnerability beneath her confident exterior. "My assistant is in New York handling the merger fallout. My parents are traveling in Europe. I could call a service to help, I suppose." Jack made a decision before fully thinking it through. "Look, I get off patrol tomorrow morning. Emma and I have a spare room. It's nothing fancy, but you're welcome to recover there until you can travel more comfortably." Zoe looked genuinely surprised by the offer. "That's incredibly kind, but I couldn't impose on you and your daughter like that." "It's no imposition. Besides, Emma would never forgive me if she found out I rescued someone from a bear attack and didn't bring her home to tell the tale." His smile was warm, genuine. "She's been reading adventure books lately. You'd be her hero." After some deliberation, Zoe accepted his offer. Jack helped her check out of her luxury rental cabin and arranged for her things to be brought to his modest home the following day. He introduced her to Emma, whose eyes widened with excitement upon hearing about the bear rescue. Did the bear have really big teeth? Emma asked, bouncing on her toes as she helped Zoe settle into their guest room, really just a small office with a futon that Jack had hastily converted. "The biggest teeth I've ever seen," Zoe confirmed solemnly. "And Dad wasn't scared at all," Emma pressed, her admiration for her father evident. Zoe looked at Jack, who was bringing in her suitcase. "Your dad was the bravest person I've ever met." He didn't hesitate for a second. Over the next few days, Zoe integrated herself into their small family with surprising ease. She worked remotely on her laptop during the day while Jack was at work, then helped Emma with her homework in the evenings. She insisted on ordering groceries delivered higher quality than Jack usually bought and having dinner ready when he came home, despite his protests. "You don't have to cook for us," Jack said on the third evening as he returned to find Zoe and Emma making homemade pizza in the kitchen, flour dusting both their faces. "I want to," Zoe replied. "Besides, Emma is teaching me. Apparently, I've been missing out on the joy of cooking my entire adult life. She didn't even know how to make mac and cheese that wasn't from a box, Dad, Emma said, with the charming superiority of a child who had grown up helping in the kitchen. Jack watched the two of them together, something warm unfurling in his chest. It had been just him and Emma for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to have another adult in their space, sharing the small moments that made up their lives. On the 5th day, when Emma was at school and Jack had taken a rare day off, he found Zoe sitting on the small deck behind their cabin, staring at the mountains visible through the trees. "Penny for your thoughts," he asked, handing her a mug of coffee. Zoe accepted it gratefully. "I was just thinking how different my life is in New York. I have a penthouse with a view of Central Park that cost more than most people's entire homes, but I've never felt as peaceful there as I do sitting on this deck drinking coffee from a chipped mug." Jack sat beside her, sipping from his own chipped mug. "Money buys comfort, but not necessarily contentment," says the philosopher forest ranger, Zoe teased, but her eyes were serious. "My leg is much better. I could probably arrange to fly back tomorrow." Jack felt a surprising pang of disappointment. "You don't have to rush off on our account. Emma's enjoying having you here. Kid doesn't get much female influence besides her teachers." "And you? Are you enjoying having me here?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility. Jack really looked at her, and saw not the wealthy CEO but just Zoe, with her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders and her eyes reflecting the green of the surrounding forest. "Yes," he said simply. "I am." That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, they sat together on the small couch, closer than they had before. Jack told her about his dreams of one day buying a bigger piece of land where Emma could have horses. Zoe shared her exhaustion with the corporate world and her secret desire to use her wealth to make a more tangible difference. "I've been thinking about establishing a foundation," she admitted, "something focused on wilderness preservation and education." "That sounds perfect for you," Jack said. "You could combine your business acumen with your newfound love of bears." Zoe laughed and playfully swatted his arm. "I wouldn't say love exactly." Their eyes met, and the laughter faded into something more intense. Jack leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. Instead, Zoe closed the distance between them, and their lips met in a kiss that felt both inevitable and surprising. When they separated, both slightly breathless, Jack said, "I should probably mention that I'm not in the habit of kissing wealthy women I rescue from wildlife. And I'm not in the habit of falling for ruggedly handsome forest rangers," Zoe returned with a smile. "But here we are." The next morning, Jack woke to find Zoe already in the kitchen, teaching Emma how to make French toast. The domesticity of the scene struck him powerfully, how quickly she had carved out a place in their lives, how natural it felt to have her there. But reality couldn't be held at bay forever. That afternoon, Zoe received a call from her assistant about an urgent matter requiring her attention in New York. Jack watched her expression change as she shifted back into CEO mode, efficiently giving directions and making decisions. When she hung up, she turned to him with regret in her eyes. "I have to go back. There's a situation with the merger that needs my personal attention." Jack nodded, ignoring the hollow feeling in his chest. "Of course, we knew this was temporary." "But it doesn't have to end completely," Zoe said, stepping closer to him. "I'd like to see where this could go, Jack, if you're willing." "Zoe, we live in completely different worlds. You run a multi-million-dollar company. I work for the government and live paycheck to paycheck in a 2-bedroom cabin. And yet, I've been happier in this cabin than I've been anywhere in years." She took his hands in hers. "I'm not saying it would be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is." That evening, they explained to Emma that Zoe needed to return to New York for work. The little girl's face fell immediately. "But you're coming back, right?" Emma asked, looking up at Zoe with hopeful eyes. Zoe knelt to Emma's level, despite the twinge in her healing leg. "I would very much like to come back and visit you and your dad if that's okay with you." Emma launched herself into Zoe's arms. More than okay. You can help me with my science project next time. It's about ecosystems. Jack watched them embrace, his heart full and aching simultaneously. When Emma went to get ready for bed, he helped Zoe pack her things. You know, he said casually, folding one of her sweaters, Wyoming's pretty nice in the fall. The aspens turn gold and the tourist crowds thin out. Zoe smiled. Is that an invitation, Ranger Zimmerman? It's a suggestion that if a certain CEO wanted to check out the foliage in, say, a month, there would be a forest ranger happy to show her around. And his daughter would probably be thrilled too. The morning of Zoe's departure was bittersweet. She had arranged for a private car to take her to the Jackson airport, where her company's jet awaited. Jack and Emma stood on their small porch, waving as the sleek black vehicle disappeared down their rural road. Is Zoe your girlfriend now, Dad? Emma asked as they went back inside. Jack hesitated, not wanting to promise something he couldn't deliver. We're figuring things out, kiddo. Well, I hope she becomes your girlfriend. She makes you smile more, and she said she'd help me learn to code websites. That's super cool. Over the following weeks, Zoe and Jack maintained a long-distance relationship through daily phone calls and video chats. Zoe would call in the evenings to help Emma with homework, and after Emma went to bed, she and Jack would talk for hours about everything and nothing. True to her word, Zoe returned to Wyoming in the fall. She arrived with gifts for both Jack and Emma, practical things like a new winter coat for Emma that was nicer than anything Jack could afford, and a professional-grade telescope for stargazing, something Jack had mentioned wanting since his college astronomy course. They spent a perfect week together exploring the park in its autumn glory, sharing meals in their small kitchen, and growing closer as a unit. On her last night, after Emma was asleep, Zoe brought up an idea she'd been contemplating. I've been looking at properties near Jackson, she said carefully. Places where I could spend more time, maybe establish a satellite office for my foundation. Jack raised an eyebrow. That's a big step. It feels right, she replied. I can run most of my business remotely. The new management team is handling the day-to-day operations beautifully, and being here, it grounds me in a way I haven't felt in years. And us? Jack asked, gesturing to the small cabin around them. Where do we fit into this plan? Zoe took his hand. Wherever you want to. I'm not asking you to change your life or your job. I'm just trying to find a way to be closer, to see if what we're building has a future. In December, Zoe returned again, this time staying through Christmas. She helped them decorate their modest tree, introduced them to her family traditions, and joined them for the community holiday celebration at the ranger station. On Christmas morning, after Emma had excitedly opened her presents, Zoe handed Jack a small envelope. Inside was a deed to 20 acres of land bordering the national forest, with permits already approved for building a home. Before you say anything, Zoe said quickly, seeing his expression, this isn't me trying to buy your affection. This is me remembering that night you told me about wanting land where Emma could have horses someday. The property is in both your names, yours and Emma's. It's yours regardless of what happens between us. Jack was speechless, torn between pride and gratitude. Zoe, this is too much. I can't accept this. You can, she insisted. Because it's not just for you, it's for Emma. And selfishly, it's for me too, because I want to see you achieve your dreams. Later that night, after Emma had finally crashed from her sugar high and Christmas excitement, Jack and Zoe sat before the fireplace in their small living room. I have something for you too, Jack said, pulling a small box from his pocket. It's not land or anything grand, but... Inside was a simple silver pendant in the shape of a bear, hand-carved by a local artisan friend of Jack's. To remember how we met, he explained as he fastened it around her neck. And because bears are symbols of courage and strength, which you have in abundance. Zoe touched the pendant, eyes glistening. It's perfect. As winter turned to spring, Zoe's visits became more frequent and longer in duration. She began construction on a modest but beautiful home on the property she'd given Jack and Emma, consulting them on every decision. She established the headquarters of her new Wilderness Education Foundation in Jackson, hiring local staff and partnering with the Park Service for educational programs. In April, during a hike to the spot where they'd first met this time without any bear encounters, Jack dropped to one knee and proposed with his grandmother's ring, a simple diamond that paled in comparison to the jewelry Zoe could afford but carried generations of love within it. "Are you sure?" Zoe asked, tears streaming down her face even as she smiled. "Your life will change, people will talk." "Let them," Jack said simply. "I love you, Emma loves you, the rest is just details." They were married that summer in a small ceremony on their new property, with Emma serving as both flower girl and ring bearer. Zoe wore a simple white dress, the bear pendant prominent around her neck. Jack wore his dress ranger uniform, at Emma's insistence. Their honeymoon was a 2-week camping trip in the backcountry, Zoe's idea, to everyone's surprise. She'd become quite the outdoor enthusiast under Jack's tutelage. By fall, they had moved into their new home, spacious enough for comfort, but modest by Zoe's previous standards. She commuted to Jackson 3 days a week for foundation work, worked remotely the rest of the time, and had scaled back her involvement in her tech company to an advisory role. Jack continued his work as a ranger, refusing Zoe's suggestion that he could retire if he wanted to. "I love what I do," he explained, "and I want Emma to see that work isn't just about money, it's about purpose." Their different backgrounds occasionally created friction. Zoe sometimes forgot that not everyone could afford spontaneous trips or expensive gifts, while Jack sometimes struggled with accepting Zoe's generosity without feeling emasculated. But they worked through each issue with honesty and respect, building a partnership that drew on both their strengths. On their first anniversary, Zoe presented Jack with news rather than a gift. She was pregnant. "Really?" Jack asked, joy spreading across his features. "Are you sure?" "3 tests and 1 doctor's visit, sure," Zoe confirmed, her own face radiant. "Emma's going to be a big sister." Emma, now 10, received the news with characteristic enthusiasm, immediately beginning a list of potential names and declaring her intention to be the best big sister in Wyoming. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, with Zoe maintaining her active lifestyle as long as possible. Jack hovered protectively, especially during the winter months when ice made the property treacherous, but Zoe took his concern in stride. "You saved me from a bear," she reminded him one evening as he fretted about her walking to the barn to see Emma's new pony. "I think I can handle a short walk on gravel." In late spring, Zoe gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named James and Joy. Emma was enraptured by the babies, taking her big sister duties very seriously and reading to them every night even though they were far too young to understand. Life with newborn twins was exhausting, especially combined with Emma's activities, Jack's ranger duties, and Zoe's foundation work. But they established a rhythm that worked for their unique family, with Zoe hiring a part-time nanny to help during her foundation meetings, and Jack adjusting his schedule to be home more. "I never thought I'd have this," Zoe admitted one night as they stood in the nursery, watching their twins sleep. "A family, a home that feels real, work that matters beyond the bottom line." "And I never thought I'd fall in love with a woman I rescued from a bear," Jack replied, slipping his arm around her waist. "Life has a way of surprising you." As the twins approached their first birthday, Zoe's foundation had become one of the most respected conservation organizations in the region, partnering with national parks across the country to develop education programs. She had found a perfect balance between her business acumen and her newfound passion for wilderness preservation. Jack had been promoted to senior ranger, allowing him more administrative duties and fewer overnight patrols, a schedule that worked better for their growing family. Emma was thriving in school and had developed a keen interest in both technology, influenced by Zoe, and natural science, influenced by Jack. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their home watching Emma show the twins how dandelion seeds floated on the wind, Jack turned to Zoe with a content smile. "You know, if you'd told me 2 years ago that I'd be sitting here with you brilliant, beautiful you and our children, I would have thought you were crazy. And if you'd told me I'd trade my penthouse for a home where I can hear coyotes at night and have to drive 40 minutes to get decent sushi, I would have had you committed," Zoe returned, leaning against his shoulder. "Any regrets?" Jack asked, a question he still sometimes needed reassurance on. Zoe watched as one of the twins' joy, their fearless one, attempted to stand using Emma's leg for support. James was more cautious, content to sit and observe the world before engaging with it. "Not a single one," she answered truthfully. "Every morning I wake up grateful for that bear," Jack laughed. "I'm not sure we should be thanking the bear for attacking you." "Maybe not for the attack itself," Zoe conceded, "but for bringing us together. For giving me a chance to see what really matters. For these beautiful children and that amazing girl who's teaching them about nature. Yes, I'm absolutely grateful." As the sun set over the Tettons, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the Zimmerman family gathered close, united by an unusual beginning but bound together by something much stronger than circumstance, a love that had overcome differences in background, wealth, and experience to create something authentic and lasting. And somewhere in the distant forest, a bear continued about its life, completely unaware that its brief, frightening encounter with 2 humans had been the catalyst for a love story that would span decades and generations.